Good morning, class.
Good morning.
This is lesson number 13. Today is February the 25th, the year of 2024. And this topic is called A Plea for Christlike Forgiveness. A Plea for Christlike Forgiveness. As lesson is in Philemon, first chapter, 4th through the 21st verse. Time is 60 AD and the place is from Rome. The golden text is, "Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sakes hath forgiven you." That's Ephesians the 4th chapter, 32nd verse. So today's aim, to examine most of Paul's letter to Philemon, in which Paul interceded on behalf of Onesimus. The principle is to teach that our position in God's family demands that we practice love and forgiveness. And the application is to encourage students to be gracious and forgiving to fellow Christians. The key factor is forgiveness. Now, I know we all tries to practice forgive and forget. I'm here to tell you that there's no way you're going to forget. However, every time it comes to your mind, forgive them again. You'll be forgiving one person for the rest of your life. So just keep forgiving, because even God didn't forgive. Well, he didn't forget everything. God just don't hold it against you. That's how we should do. Don't forget, just don't hold it against them. So we need to get out of that factor of you remember when you did, and you remember when you did this, and you remember that, and you remember this. We need to stop doing that, because as long as we keep going back in time, we're going to have to backtrack those steps all over again. Every time we turn around and go back, we're going to have to do it all over again. So stop turning back, thinking about what used to happen back in the day. Stop thinking about how people used to be towards you, and think about how life is now. Who this person may be now. See, it's because it's the now that we have to live for. We can't think about the future too much, and we can't think about the past too much. The only thing we need to focus on is the now. And as long as you're thinking about the now, did you bother me today? No, you did not. We are good today. And that's the only thing we need to focus on. We are good today. Tomorrow is another story, because tomorrow don't never get here. Even when we wake up in the morning, that'll still be that day. It won't be tomorrow. We'll still be looking for tomorrow. So stop talking about the things for tomorrow and stop thinking about the things that used to happen back in the day, because we need to learn how to forgive and to forget. Now, Paul is who we're talking about. Paul is still writing a letter. This time, Paul is not writing a letter to a church. Paul is writing a letter to an individual, to a person. And the person that he is writing this letter to is Philemon. Philemon, however you want to call his name. But I've been growing up saying Philemon. I've heard many other preachers and teachers say it differently, but that's the way I've been taught to say it. But Paul is smooth. He's a smooth talker. Okay, I'm just gonna say it like that. Paul is a smooth talker. Now, in this letter here, the guy that we're talking about, his name is Onesimus, and Onesimus is a runaway slave. Okay, he was, in other words, he was in bondage himself, and he escaped. Now, what he was as a slave for is because he has committed a crime. He was a thief, in other words. He took things, and so when they mention slavery here, it's not slavery like we're thinking, how we used to be cast out, beaten, and hung, and all this stuff. It's not slavery like that. The slavery that they're talking about or discussing is basically he has to pay off what he has done. The crime that he has committed, he has to pay that debt, like community service. He has to pay that debt back. Right. So he was a slave to Philemon. And see, the reason I can say that it's not the type of slavery that we're thinking about is because Philemon and Paul were Christian brothers. Yeah. They were both believers in Christ. So Philemon is not one that's going to hold you in bondage just because he paid for you. That's not him. Philemon is one that held him in bondage because he was paying off a debt from a crime that he has committed. Now, does your Christian acts make people look at you differently? No. Because the same person that people saw before you became a Christian is the same person they see after you become a Christian. However, it's the things that you do, but it's the factor of forgiving that allows people to look past who you used to be and start looking at who you are. Now, the reason I said that Paul was a smooth talker is because how he wrote this letter. Paul knew exactly how to break this letter down. He talked. Now, his first statement, that's an opening statement. Now, it's just like us. He says, I thank my God. In other words, he's praying. Paul letting them know that he's praying, and in his prayer, he says, making mention of thee always in my prayers. So he says, I praise to God daily. And also in my prayers, I always mention you. I'm always praying for you. Always praying that God looks after you. I'm always praying that God do things good for you. I'm always praying that God blesses you, just like we should do. Anytime we pray, our prayer should not just be based on ourselves. Shouldn't just be based on things we want God to do for us, but also what we want God to do for others. The same prayer that you pray for yourself is the prayer that needs to go out to others, not just for yourself. So Paul started it out by saying, I'm thanking God for everything that he has done for me. I'm also thanking God for you. I'm asking God to help you. I'm doing all these things for you. So Paul starts it out that way, and verses 5 through 7, this is where Paul starts doing his little buttering up stage. Paul, he mentions here, it says, hearing of thy love and faith which thou hast towards the Lord Jesus and toward all saints, that the communication of thy faith may become effectual by the acknowledging of every good thing which is in you in Christ Jesus. For we have great joy and consolation in thy love, because the bowels of the saints are refreshed by thee, brother. So, that's it. Paul, he's at this buttering up stage. You know how you do people. You make people feel good about themselves. Tell them how good they are, the good things that they do. Man, I seen you do this yesterday. I love how you do this. I love how you do that. It's a buttering up stage. Everybody needs to be buttered up sometime. And it's not a bad thing to butter people up. If people does things good for you, or you see good things coming out of certain people, let them know. It make them feel good, and in turn, it makes them do it again, because they want that same affection again. So Paul is buttering him up. He's telling him that, I love how you are with people. I love how you are with the Christian men and the Christian women. I love how you treat people with kindness and respect and generosity. I love all these things. But see, verse 8 comes with his but. Paul says, Wherefore though I might be much bold in Christ to enjoin thee that which is covenant. Because of the man that Paul is straight out telling him. He says, even though you are such a good man, and I love how you treat all these people. I love how you treat your Christians. But the man that I am, I have every right to force you to do things. But I'm not going to do that. I'm asking a favor. I'm asking. Even, see, Paul is letting them know that he have all the power he need to force Philemon into doing exactly what he want him to do. But Paul wants Philemon to do these things willingly. You know, we can force a lot of people into doing things that we want them to do, but that don't draw them closer to us. When you force people to do things, you might get the job done, but then you lose a person at the same time. You lose a friend. You lose backing. So they might still work for you, but they're not going to put everything they got into it anymore because you're forcing. And Paul didn't want to force Philemon into doing these things. Paul, he straight out let Philemon know that you are a good man. I'm acknowledging that you are a good man. So because I know that you're a good man, I know inside your heart you're going to feel what I'm saying. You're going to hear me out. So Paul is talking to him just like that. Says, yet for love's sake. Well, see, we're always talking about love. Because you can't do anything Christ-like without love. It is impossible to be Christ-like without loving. How can you hate somebody and be Christ-like? If you can't forgive me, then you can't do anything that God asks. So we're talking about forgiveness and love. See, inside forgiveness, it comes love. So if you can't love me, you can't forgive me. You might say you forgive me, and I might leave, but the next day you see me, it's stay away from me. I remember what you did to me yesterday, or last week, or last year. Keep back. Don't come near me. So whenever you can't forgive, you don't have any love. So if you don't have any love, you will never let these people come close to you again. And see, if Philemon would have had hatred in his heart, whether Paul sent Onesimus back or not, Philemon would not have accepted him. He would have still been a runaway slave, even when he returned. And once he returned, he would have been punished for desertion, on top of his other punishments. But it's because the love that he had in his heart, that's what Paul saw. That's what Paul was writing to. Paul was writing to not the physical person. Paul was writing to Philemon's heart. Because he knew Philemon's heart. He knew what type of person he was. So everything in this letter, it was addressed to Philemon's heart, not the person. You can write a letter to me all you want, but if inside my heart I'm not feeling that letter, might as well not even written it. Because what I'm going to feel is the same thing I felt whether you wrote it or not. Because I don't have any love inside. See, Paul says here, yet for love's sake, I rather beseech thee, being such an one as Paul the aged, and now also a prisoner of Jesus Christ. Paul is letting him know plainly again, even though I'm a prisoner, even though I'm an old man, don't take what you see as weakness. It says I can get the job done whether you want to participate or not, but I know your heart. I'm looking for you to do these things willingly. I need you to do it willingly. I don't need you to do it just because I say do it. I need you to do it willingly. I don't want to go out there and force you to do these things, because then that puts you back. See, Philemon would not have been in God's sight if Paul would have made Philemon do these things, because Philemon would have been bringing Onesimus in on an order, not because he wanted to. And that's it. You don't get no credit for somebody making you do things versus you doing it yourself. You get no credit. See, Paul was just expressing how strong he was. Paul says, even though I'm in prison, even though I'm an old man, I can get the job done. And the reason he can get the job done is because Paul is not doing this alone. Paul is working with God. God is doing these things through Paul. So if Paul needed anything done, Paul was always going to ask God for it. So what Paul decided to do was just go to Philemon and say, hey, I want you to willingly do these things for me. I know there's some hatred going on between you and this man Onesimus. I know there's some hatred because of what he did. But I need you to look past that. We need to start looking past what people has done to us. We need to start looking past the hatred that people has towards us. Just because somebody has bothered you or mistreated you back in the day, you need to learn to look past that. Because if you keep following up with what happened back in the day, you will never know their growth. You will never understand who they've become. And nobody can ever see who you've become because you've blocked that. You shut it off. Yep. Nobody sees the true you because you're still stuck on yesterday. It says, I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds. Paul calls Onesimus his son. And the reason he calls him his son is because of the help that he's been getting from him while he was in bondage. See, Paul didn't know who Onesimus was until Paul was imprisoned. Once Paul was imprisoned and Onesimus escaped, he ran into Paul and they became close acquaintances. Onesimus was preaching the word to Paul. They talked back and forth, and I'm just going to imagine that Paul, being who Paul was, never going back against who he was, so Paul was always going to be talking about God. So I'm just imagining that Onesimus just stumbled across Paul and overheard some of the things that Paul was saying and got stuck into it. Y'all know how it goes sometimes. Y'all be scrolling across your phone and then you run across a video and you just get stuck into that video, and once that's over you got to find out what happens next. So you subscribe to that video just so you can find what happened next. Mm-hmm. That's what Onesimus did with Paul. Mm-hmm. Because he heard some good stuff that Paul was talking, he stuck around and continued getting more and more information. So in turn, what ended up happening was he got stuck into the good news and he started sharing good news back with Paul. So in turn, they became close acquaintances. And because Paul was such an old man, Paul took him on as his son. It's like many of us may have sons and daughters that we didn't even give birth to. Mm-hmm. I know I got a few. They call me dad, pops, and granddad, uncle. You know, they call me a whole lot of things, and not even relation to most of them. But it's just the thing about who they see when they come close to you. Where am I at? Okay. All right. It says, which in times past, see, here we go, talking about the past now. It says, which in times past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee and to me. He wasn't who he is now back then. Back in the day, Onesimus was terrible. See, the reason Onesimus was a slave is because of who he used to be. Right. If people was to treat us, and I'm talking about us that's sitting in here, if people was to treat us based on who we used to be, how many of us would make it to the point that we're at now? We wouldn't have the friends that we have now. We wouldn't have the support that we have now. We wouldn't have anything that we have now because people are still looking at who we used to be. If I was the person today that I used to be, I wouldn't be standing here. most definitely wouldn't be standing here. Because church was the last place that I wanted to be, but the place that I've always been. Never wanted to be here. Never liked coming. I used to sit in church and talk about people in church. So if people was to treat me based on the person I used to be, I'd have never had the opportunity to stand up here, because they'd have still been looking at me like, you don't take this serious. You're not a man of God, because the whole time coming up, the only thing you used to do, see, they talking about the used to. The only thing you used to do is sit back there and talk about people and curse them out and do all these things. But that's who I used to be. That's not who I am. Onesimus used to be a thief. He used to be a criminal. But now, Onesimus is a changed man. He had something deep. See, he says, back then Onesimus, he wasn't useful to any of us. There was nothing he could have done that we could have benefited from. If he'd have done anything for us, it would have been against us. It would have set us back for him to even do something that we asked him to do, because the only thing he would have done was trying to find a way to do it easy and not the right way. Onesimus would have just been around there just trying to get the job done, just because he said, I need to go out there and do this, so as long as they see me out here doing something, I guess they think I'm doing it. So Onesimus, hey, I need you to go out there and put some tires on that truck out there, and Onesimus would have just went out there and put some tires on the truck, and he wouldn't have put the rims on it, because that's what Onesimus would have did. He'd just been doing a job just because you said do it.
Well, teacher, for the fact that there are people that they put on the show some things, and they think it's like Christlike and not in Christ. They make a big show about things that who I am, and things, and they don't have the inside of them.
Yep, that's true. And see, that goes back to verse 5 through 7. Mm-hmm. Like I said, when Paul was in his buttering up stage, Paul was telling Philemon, he says, now, this is the type of man that you're supposed to be now. You're supposed to be a God-fearing man. You're supposed to be Christian. You're supposed to be godly. So you're not supposed to look down on your fellow man. So because you're not supposed to look down on him, if this is the type of person that you said you was, you need to look past Onesimus' faults. You need to look past his faults, because you said you was a Christian. Now, if I say I'm a Christian, people shouldn't see me out there doing ungodly things, because I said I'm a Christian. And because I said I'm a Christian, you should be able to come to me and talk to me about any problem or situation you're going through, and I should look past your faults. I shouldn't even think about, well, if you hadn't have been doing this, you wouldn't have been in this situation. I shouldn't even be looking at that. I should consider what you're saying and have a godly communication, a godly conversation with you.
That's right.
I should be able to talk to you about your problem, letting you understand where you may or may not have went wrong without bringing up your past. I shouldn't say, well, the person that you used to be, you had this coming. I shouldn't be like that. Though many of us are. See, Paul is plainly telling Philemon that, remember back in the day when you needed help. Because you're going to see it later on when Paul says, hey, you know you owe me anyway, but I'm not going to bring any of that up. I'm just looking for you to do the right thing.
And the teach on that subject of that, just like you said, someone has a conversation, communication. And it's the way how you act with a person have the love in your heart, tenderness, heart and everything. And you got to listen what a person says, knowing that what he's saying maybe not true or not be right. But you encourage your way of knowing. And people, I've been very called, and Paul was saying, I am a prisoner of Christ. First, you reduce yourself to a personal life that once they've been in the thing a person did in life. Like you said, you go past that situation because you come back, look at me, what I did. So I ain't had no right to judge you what you're doing, but all I do is explain for the Christlike thing how we should be able to turn yourself around from things. Because sometimes people ask, I say, well, I have this problem, that problem. I say, well, the one thing to do is give it to God. But you got to turn what you're doing, you got to turn loose of that in kind of general way. You got to have to be able to talk to them, really take one person. That's the heart, not the lips.
It says here, whom I have sent again, though therefore receive him, that is mine own bowels. So after Paul explained to Philemon all of the things that he was supposed to be, and like I said, at first he talked to him about how good of a person he is, how godlike he is, how godly he is, how he treats his fellow Christians, how he treats his fellow brothers and sisters. He was telling them all the good things about him. And he's telling him, he says, look, and because I know that you're that type of person, I want you to look past Onesimus' faults. I want you to look past that and don't think about all the problems that he used to be. I just want you to think about who he is now. He says, so therefore, I'm going to be sending him. See how he works this down? He didn't send him and then send the letter. He sent the letter first to make sure that Philemon read everything that he needed to know about Onesimus. So after he found out that Onesimus is a better person, he's a changed man. Now the letter gets to him and then he says, and I'm sending him back to you. Just to let you know that Onesimus is not still fleeing. He's going back on his own will and accord, because think about it now. Paul is in prison. Mm-hmm. Paul can't really make Onesimus do anything that he don't want to do, because Paul can't grab him. Paul can't hold him. Paul can't force him over there. Paul can't take him over there. The only thing that Paul can do is tell him that he needs to go back. That's it. Mm-hmm. So Onesimus going back to Philemon, he's going back on his own free will. So he needs Philemon to understand that Onesimus could still be running. He could still be fleeing, but he chose to return. And see, he's not just returning back as your slave. He says, I need you to look at him as a brother. That's right. Not as a slave, because Onesimus is more help for both of us than he used to be. He used to not help just you, but then he met me and he became a fellow brother to me. Yeah. But now I'm sending him back so that he wouldn't just be help for just me, but for the both of us. Right. Whom I would have retained with me, that in thy stead he might have ministered unto me in the bonds of the gospel. So what he's basically saying here is, it's funny how he said it, because he's saying he would keep him here to do your job, the things that you should be doing for me. Onesimus was doing that here, and I would keep him here to continue doing your job, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to send him back to you so that he can work for the both of us and not just me. So the thing that Onesimus was over here with Paul doing, Philemon should have been doing. That's basically how he wrote this letter. He says, you should have been doing these things that I want to keep him here to continue doing. But I'm going to let him go back to you so he can be a benefactor for us both and not just me. So you come from being a person that nobody wants to a person that I love, now to a person that we need. That's why you shouldn't hold grudges on people. Because that same person that you decided not to forgive for doing something to you years ago might be that one person that you need to get you out of a jam.
That's right.
Might be the only person that can help you when you need help.
That's right.
But you decided not to forgive them. What happens when you do need them? Let's take for instance that you've done something. Now before then, somebody just really bothered you a long time ago, and you just made up in your mind, I would never forgive them. And you've done something, and you went and stood before the judge, and you need the judge to say not guilty. And you find out that that judge happens to be that person that you decided not to forgive. What do you think the judge is going to say? If you've never thought about forgiving, every time you ran into them, you says, hey, just stay away from me. Leave. Go on. I don't want to see you. I don't want you nowhere around me. You disgust me. Go somewhere. And now you need them. See, that's why you shouldn't hold grudges on people. Because you never know.
Never know.
That one person might be who you need.
Right.
But without thy mind would I do nothing. That thy benefit should not be as it were of necessity, but willingly. Your mind is, it's a very important part of you. I'm going to tell you that now. Your mind is so important. I'm going to tell you how important your mind really is. Without your mind, you is nothing. You're only as good as your next thought. Y'all understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Your thought controls your next step. Your thought controls your life. It controls your living. It controls how you are going to be, who you're going to be, where you're going to be. Your thought does that. So basically what he said here was he would keep Onesimus there if he didn't have a mind. He would let Onesimus stay there with him and continue preaching the word to him if he didn't have a mind. But because he have a mind, he understands that Onesimus is more help if he leave. Onesimus could help more people if he leave. He can be a benefit to others if he leave. So it's that mind. You decide to, well, I'm going for a jog today. Now you got on your shorts, tank top shirt, headband, sneakers, and you out getting ready to go outside for a jog. Before you go for a jog, you check the news and you find out that it's going to be below zero. Now if you didn't have a mind, you'll continue on your jog with those shorts on, tank top shirt, ready for that jog. Now it's below zero, you freezing. But because you got a mind, you decide to either stay indoors or put on something warm. You're only as good as your next thought. So if you don't think good thoughts, you're a bad person.
What the teacher, there's something in my mind I'm thinking about. If you ain't had no hair on your body, what your body can do?
Your body can't do nothing more because what it takes for your body to operate, it don't have. Your body don't have this mind control. See, it's everything that's up here that controls what goes on down here. If you get rid of the head, the tail can't do nothing. The tail will roam around bumping into God knows what. Because they have no clue where it's at. If you get rid of the head, you got rid of the whole thing. And that's what we've been talking about before, about the heads of the house. If you destroy the head, you destroy the whole body. So if we don't have a good thought, then everything about us is bad. We have to think God in order to be godly. We have to think right in order to be righteous. You can't think good thoughts sometimes and, well, I'll just do this one time and then go back to doing good today, and next week do one bad thing, but I've done a whole week of good things, so that ain't gonna matter. Yes, it does. It does matter. See, like I always teach, and every Sunday school, I always tries to put this in my classes. For every choice that you make comes consequences. Whatever you decided to do, whether it's good or bad, it all comes with consequences. There's always something that's going to result from what you did. Like playing chess. For your move, it's going to counteract their move. Whatever move they makes, you're going to have to come up with something else to defeat that move so that something else can happen good. So if you make a bad decision, bad consequences you're going to have to deal with. If you make a good decision, those consequences you still going to have to deal with. Whether it's good or bad, it's just whether or not are you capable of handling the consequences. So if you can't handle certain and this is how I'm going to try to help a lot of people out. And so I hope a lot of people listening right now. So because this will really help you out. If you think about all the bad things in life, everything you can think of that's bad, if you can't deal with it, think about the choices that you would have to make to go through that. And don't do that. Because if you can't handle the consequences that you will end up going into by doing certain things, don't do it. I know a lot of people will say, well, there's a 50% chance I might not get caught. Yes, but there's also a 50% chance that you will. So if you don't want to deal with those consequences, just don't do it. And the best way that I can say not to do certain things is think in love. Because if you love, there's no way you're going to do anything against anybody that's going to cause you to do anything that you can't bear. Because you're thinking in love. Like this whole lesson is talking about, thinking in love. We think in love. We do things in love. See, it's because of love is the reason that Paul felt like he could write this letter to Philemon and tell Philemon to look past Onesimus' problems. Look past his faults. It's because of love. He knew that Philemon was full of love. Philemon was Christlike. So he knew Philemon was going to consider who Onesimus has become and not who he used to be. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldest receive him forever. He says, I know he left. And I know the reason he left, he ran away because he didn't want to be a slave. Or in other words, a prisoner. So Paul says, look, I feel where he's coming from. I understand where he's coming from. The thing is, me and him are two different people. We don't think alike. So if I was him, I'd probably ran too, because see, Onesimus didn't have God in him. Paul did. So Paul knew that whatever happens to him, it's only happening to him because God is allowing it. Onesimus, on the other hand, he's thinking, these people are just bad. They're putting them through all of this. All this for what? Because I took something, just one little thing. I took one little thing, and now they got me here. Got me doing all this stuff because I took one little thing.
Yeah.
Well, That's why a lot of criminals that haven't got caught is still out there doing bad things. Because they haven't got caught yet. And see, Onesimus is thinking, well, I've only did this and now they're got me going through all these things here just for this one little incident. If he'd have never got caught, it would have been more than one little incident. Just like a lot of us today. As long as we don't get caught, we fine. But once we get caught, all I did was took this, but what else did you do? That's all they found from you, but what else did you do? See, Onesimus, he was that type of person that if he wanted it, he took it. If he needed it, he took it. And because of that, he was a prisoner or a slave for Philemon. So Philemon wasn't the slave owner that said, I want to buy him so that he can work my farms and do this for me and tend my cattle. He wasn't that type of man. Philemon was a Christian man. So the type of slave that Onesimus was, he was a slave based on his actions. The things that he has done, the choices that he has made, put him in this situation. And Paul wants Philemon to look past that. He don't want Philemon to continue looking at him as a slave. He wants him to look at him as a fellow brother, as another Christian man, just like he think about him. Not now as a servant, but a brother servant, a brother beloved, especially to me, but how much more unto thee, both in the flesh and in the Lord. I don't want you to look at Onesimus as a servant. Said, past beyond being a slave, I don't even want you to look at him as being a servant. I don't even want you to look at him as just being a brother. I want you to look at him as if you was thinking about me. Treat him the way that you would treat me. If I was to walk up to you right now, I want you to treat him just like you would treat me if it was me. Because Paul and Philemon knew each other. They were Christian brothers. They knew each other. And they loved each other. So Paul is telling Philemon, I want you to treat Onesimus just like you would treat me if I was to meet you. Look past the fact that he left your camp and ran away. Look past that. Because Onesimus grew from who he was. Not taking away the fact that he did what he did to get there. Not taking that away from him. But he is a changed man. He is not the same man that you once had. When he returned, he will be a different man. And who else better to talk this situation than Paul? See, Paul understands. Yeah. If people was to look at Paul as the person he used to be, Paul wouldn't be in the situation that he's in now.
That's right.
But Paul would be in a worse situation. Paul might still be walking the earth. He might still be out doing what he want to do, but he would be out of God's graces. See, right now, Paul knows that anything that happens, it happens because God allowed it to happen. And whatever the end result is, he's going home to God. Paul knows that. So Paul is not worried. Y'all see how calm Paul is writing these letters?
Yeah.
Paul is not worried. He ain't crying. He ain't confused. He ain't shouting. He ain't doing nothing. Paul is cool. Paul is writing this letter to Philemon so that he can have Onesimus come back to him and work as a fellow brother, not as a slave. Paul is asking something for Onesimus that he can't even get right now. Paul is not a selfish person. Y'all will see what I'm talking about. Paul ain't selfish. Says, if thou count me therefore a partner, receive him as myself. The way you look at me, that's how I need you to treat him. Like for y'all, the way y'all treat y'all best friend. I I'm y'all closest partner. That's how y'all need to treat everybody. Anybody you come in contact with, you need to treat them that same way. So if you won't hurt your best friend, if you won't hurt your partner, you shouldn't hurt anybody that come in contact with you. If everybody lived by that, this world wouldn't be in chaos like it is.
Right.
You know, I just looked at the news, and they had the stats. South Carolina itself is one of the worst states in the United States when it comes to crime. Marion County, this little small town, is number 9 on the crime list. It's that high up the chart.
Yeah.
Number 9 on the crime list.
That's right.
In this little state of South Carolina, this little old Marion County is number 9 on the crime list, and the crime list is based on little children.
Yeah.
Not adults,
No.
little children.
That's right.
Children that haven't even understood who they were yet are the ones that's committing these crimes. They don't even know themselves. And they're doing things against their fellow brothers. Now, anybody really understand slavery? What slavery was all about? Does anybody really understand that? You know, the thing about it, most people think that slavery consisted of white folks taking black folks, making them do this and making them do that. Negative. It was the person of power taking the person of lesser power and making them do whatever they wanted them to do. That's what slavery was all about. Had nothing to do with the color. A lot of people is bringing this color thing up. Has nothing to do with the color. Has a lot to do with who has the power. So whoever had the power is who had the slaves. If you went against the power, you was going to be dealt with. So if the children are our future, and us adults, I'm pointing all this to us. If the children is the future, and the children is out there committing all of these crimes, who is to blame? Because we stopped teaching as adults. We let the children go and do whatever they want to do. You don't want to go nowhere? Fine, stay home. You don't want to come home on time? Fine, stay out. Whatever you want to do, I don't want to deal with it. We let them go out there and do whatever they want to do. But yet, when they get in trouble, you say it's their fault. It's not their fault. Where was their guidance? They've done things based on what you've allowed them to do all of this time. But yet, we're going to try to blame the child. We want to enforce the rules in the house when they're home, but when they get in trouble, we want to blame the child. They haven't listened to anything that you said because you've allowed them to do what they wanted to do from day one.
Yeah, that's it.
And now you want to start telling them what they should and shouldn't do. They get in trouble and now it's their fault. Most of the time I think that, and just most parents, now it's most, I'm not saying that all parents allow their child to go out there and do things, because sometimes the child goes out there and do things that the parent done told them not to do, and they find out why. Right. Like I said before, sometimes you only get one chance.
That's right.
See, they find out why mom and daddy say don't do this. Well, y'all did it when y'all was young. Yeah, we did it. That's why I'm telling you not to.
That's right.
Because we understand what will happen. So now they go out there and do these things, and now they're crying about it. What you want me to do? There's nothing more I can do. I've tried. I've tried all I could do to help. You didn't listen then, and now you want my help. Let me keep going with this list, guys. I done veered off a bit. It says, if thou, nope, I'm going to pass that too. If he hath wronged thee, or of thee aught, put that on mine account. Remind you, Paul didn't even know Onesimus. He didn't even know who this man was until he stumbled across him while he was saying something about God in prison. And Onesimus just happened to listen, got stuck into the conversation. And I'm just guessing, I don't know, I don't even know what the prison looked like, but I'm just guessing that Paul was saying some things through the little window or something, and Onesimus overheard him and just sat down by the window and just kept on listening to the conversation and got stuck into it. And then they started going back and forth with the word until the point till Onesimus became a godly man, and now instead of receiving the word, he's giving the word. Now, Paul didn't know Onesimus, but what did he say? He says, if he hath wronged thee, or of thee aught, put that on my account. I take full responsibility. Whatever it is he did to you, whatever it is he owed you, charge that to me. I don't care what it is. I don't know this man, but put it on my account. How many of us will do that? You don't know anything about this person out there, but you feel like they're a good man. And you just say, I vouch for them. If they owe you anything, charge it to me. I know my father used to do that a lot. I couldn't understand it. I'm telling you, I couldn't understand it. My father would go down to the jailhouse and say, would you please let them go and just hold me responsible if they do anything else. My father would do that a lot. I didn't understand how he would go down there and put his name on a lot of these people. Because some of them, even if they was 1,000 yards away, I couldn't trust them. I'll still be holding my pockets like this, tight, because I couldn't trust them. Couldn't even see them and still thinking they're going to get something. That's how some of them was. But my father looked past that. And if they got locked up, he would say, if you release them, whatever they do is on me. That's what Paul is saying right here. Paul saying, whatever it was he did, charge it to me. I take full responsibility. A man that he don't know. But yet, we fuss and fight with our own brothers, sisters, cousins. Not even that. Kids fussing with mothers and fathers. Now that's the kicker. Little children telling mom and daddy what they is and isn't going to do. I hear them now. I'm not one that grew up like this, because if I grew up like this, I probably would have false teeth right now. But there's little kids right now, the parent asks them to do something, they say no. Parent call them, what? Like, hold up now. It couldn't have been me. I wouldn't have had no teeth right now. It's how they are being raised. Now that's what I was saying before. It is not on the child. You can't hold them responsible for the things that they're not doing. If they wasn't taught these things, you can't expect for them to start doing them. Mom and daddy ain't never made me do this, so why should I start? Mine to tell you, even when they be trying to talk to their aunts, they might have mentioned their aunts by their first name, but I say, hold up. It's aunt so-and-so. I understand they might feel comfortable with you doing that, but respect is respect.
That's right.
If they didn't want to be called aunt so-and-so, they shouldn't have been your aunt. If it was mine, that's basically me. And my oldest daughter, she didn't even know that my name was Kenneth the first starting up. Said, what's your daddy's name, Daddy? His name is Daddy Davis. and that's how it should have been. I didn't know my granddaddy's name until I seen it on his tombstone. And think about how old I was when that was. I thought his name was Granddaddy the whole time. You better not have called him Arthur. There wasn't but one person that I knew of that called him Arthur, and that was my grandma. Didn't even know who she was talking about then.
That's about like that boy in the house went to the store, and then somebody come there one time and said, "Get home." I said, "Who is that?" And I didn't know nobody about that skill.
Alright, it says here, I, Paul, have written it with mine own hand. I will repay it, albeit I do not say to thee how thou owest unto me, even thine own self besides. Paul says, I wrote this myself. I'm letting you know. This is nobody else's writing.
Yeah.
This is me. I did this. I write this. So on my behalf, I need you to look over his faults. Look over his faults, because I'm going to take full responsibility. I say this as Paul. Yea, brother, let me have joy of thee in the Lord. Refresh my bowels in the Lord. Having confidence in thy obedience, I wrote unto thee, knowing that thou wilt also do more than I say. So now y'all understand why Paul isn't forcing Philemon into doing these things. Because Paul says, I know you. I know the type of man that you are. I know who you said you was. I know what you stand for. If you stand for God, you will live by these words. If you stand for God, you won't hold him accountable for his past. I know some people, they do needs to go through their punishments.
Amen.
Some punishments it just shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, right.
Some things you do, you just need to pay for. But see, the one thing that about Onesimus, the one thing that nobody really knew was the why. That's what nobody really knew, was the why. What he did was he stole something. The one thing they didn't know was the why. Until you know the why, him being held accountable for certain things shouldn't exist. Y'all know how it is in court.
Yeah.
They don't charge you completely until they know the full story. Once they get more of the story of why they arrested you, then your full charges can come. But until then, you just sitting and waiting. They grab you, lock you up, and put you in jail, and you just sit there and wait until they get the full story.
That's right.
Once they get the full story, then they can determine what they need to do with you.
That's it.
So what was the full story? What was the reason Onesimus did what he did? What was the reason? See, I'm just guessing that being the type of person that Onesimus became after he met Paul, I'm just guessing that he did certain things that he felt like he needed to do. I'm guessing that the things that he took, he needed it at the time. It was like he just couldn't do without it. There was no way else around it. It was just there, and he really needed it. Didn't have the money for it, but he really needed it. Like I said, there's really no explanations behind crimes that anybody do. But it is the why. Why did you do certain things?
That's it.
Yes, I committed a crime. Why did I commit the crime? Nobody knows why Onesimus did it. They only know that he did it. But see, that's when you need to leave it in God's hands.
Yeah.
When you can't figure out the reason why, leave it in God's hands. God will always show that why, if it needs to be shown. All dirt doesn't need to be dug up. I think that's why they put power lines underground now, because all dirt don't need to be dug up. Start digging in the wrong place and you'll find out why. All dirt don't need to be dug up. You need to leave certain things where it at.
Yeah.
Just leave it there. Only reveal what needs to be revealed. See, my father used to tell me the truth isn't always to be told at all times.
That's right.
But a lie at no time.
No time.
Yeah. I don't have to tell you everything, but I ain't gonna lie to you either. I might answer your question without that question. I'll answer it, but I ain't gonna tell you exactly what it was. So I'm either gonna be quiet, or I'm gonna tell you a little piece of it. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm just not gonna tell you the full story. So Philemon was really a man of God. So that's why it says here, having confidence in his obedience. See, Paul was that confident in Philemon. He just left it in a letter. He didn't send anybody to force him to do certain things. He didn't make him do anything. He didn't ask God to strike him down to do this. Philemon was obedient, like our parents did to us back in the day. They sent one command and they left it alone because they knew what they asked was going to be done. They didn't think about it anymore. They just said, hey, go and tell such and such I need this done before I get back. They don't say nothing else about it. They leave and then they come back and the job is done. Because an obedient person, you don't have to tell but one time. Right. Once you tell them, they do it. We need to be like that. We need to be obedient just like that. Obedience is the key to everything. Being obedient is the key to success. It's the key to your financial wealth. It's the key to your health. It's the key to life. Being obedient is the key to everything that you want and need in life. If the doctor tells you, I need you to take this,